So, yeah, for our panel, first, well, of course, we have Tom, who has already spoken a lot about Viisi. So you've heard his story already a bit. You might have some more questions about everything that he shared. Our next panelist is Rebecca Brover. So let's give her an applause. Rebecca's here from HolacracyOne. So maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit more about what you do at HolacracyOne.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Brover. I'm a partner with HolacracyOne. I'm based in California when I'm not traveling, so I know that I tend to speak very quickly. If my California accent is running away with me, somebody give me one of these and I'll slow down. My work with HolacracyOne is twofold. Most of it is coaching organizations and individuals looking to adopt Holacracy. My area of expertise is specifically small organizations, NGOs, and not the traditional managers. I tend to do most of my focus work with the average line worker, the administrative worker, the biggest majority of most employees of the orgs. The other half of my work is coaching at trainings and organizing logistics. So I've been with HolacracyOne for just over 3 years and was exposed to Holacracy about 5 years ago because I found it more efficient. It saved me time. And time is the resource I value most.
Thank you so much. So our next panelist is Reuben Timmerman. He's the founder of Springest. So give him an applause. So Ruben, tell us.
Quick intro?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the pants, as to not disturb the panel too much, they're from Aloha from Deer, which is a very cool company that has designers, freelancers that make designs, and then they let, as it looks, sort of former housewives from London sew up the pants and the shirts and the sweaters, and I bought a few of them. And they emailed me every week, like, "Hey, we've now printed it on the stuff, and now Susan is sewing your pants, and it will take a while, but it was really cool." And it's a nice story. Plus, the pants are nice. So thanks for the compliments, my secret admirer, and everybody else who. Now you're not secret anymore. Oh, it wasn't you. Okay. Well, I'm the founder of Springest. This is our office, or one of the two offices, as you heard LeadLinks say. I started with Holacracy about 6.5 years ago, together with Diederick, after a training that he did with us to introduce us to the concept, and we kind of had to figure out how to implement it ourselves, because I didn't know anyone who did it before, and there were not many examples. What is nice to know is that we now say Holacracy is not a topic anymore. So if someone asks me, how's it going with Holacracy, I'm inclined to say, yeah, I guess, fine, I don't know, we're just running the company, and Holacracy is the language that we speak. But for the rest, we don't talk about how we talk all the time. So that's the status. And if you want to know what I do, you could look it up at roles.springest.com, which is our online version of Glassfrog, but it's homegrown, based on Asana, our project management tool. And type in Ruben there, and then you see the probably 25 to 35 roles that I have. The most important one being the happiness role, in which I talk with everybody who works at Springest every quarter for about an hour about their ambition, their energy, their happiness, the things that block them, basically everything outside of their roles, outside of their performance. So that's one of the many things I do here. That's it, I guess.
Thanks so much. So we have another panelist, Diederick Janse from Energized. Give him an applause. Diederick, can you introduce yourself, please?
I think I can, yes. Hi everyone, Diederick. I have been involved with Holacracy since 2007, when I invited Brian Robertson out to the Netherlands for the first time. Didn't get straight into it. Actually, I think I wrote a rather skeptical blog post about it at the time, and then that somehow disappeared on the internet. That's no longer there. Kind of conveniently. I didn't have anything to do with that, but it happened. And I think I've been involved with this work because I'm mostly scratching my own itch, as so many of us are. I want to work on something that's meaningful to me, that I really believe in, that I can fully get behind, do it with others that care about the same thing, and do it without drama, do it without kind of lots of distraction, lots of personal conflict or just stuff that gets in the way. That's what I'm looking for. Turn that into a business, basically, helping others do that. Still figuring out how to do it myself, really, to be honest. The thing that's really on my mind lately is how can I help people be more powerful? You know, and powerful, I think in Dutch particularly, is a bad word. Like, it's not a good thing. I think I'd like people to reclaim that power as a good thing and use it for purpose, right? Not for their own interests, which is, I think, how we often think about it. So that's something that's important to me, and Holacracy helps with that. So yeah, that's me.
All right, thanks so much. So that's our panel. We have a lot of questions on the screen here already. So I suggest we start off with those, and I'll have a few questions myself for you as well. At the top most upvoted question is about where Holacracy wouldn't work. I don't know who asked the question in the audience. Do you voted for it? Is there anyone in specific that you would want to direct the question to, or Rebecca? California. Yeah, so Rebecca.
So my quick snarky California answer is I haven't found one yet. But the longer, more grounded answer is, in my experience, both data-driven and anecdotal, the companies where Holacracy cannot survive are the ones where the person or persons with the explicit power to ratify the Constitution are not committed. Both in pre-adoption and also, one example, we had a team in Google experimenting with Holacracy. They had adopted, they were actually doing great, but it was a very small department. So the department restructured, a new leader came in, the person with the explicit power, interested in the idea, but not committed to the practice, and the adoption crashes and burns. In the cases where I see Holacracy adoption fail, it's not due to industry, it's not due to habits or power shift, it's really due to that last action of the explicit power holder, maintaining commitment. I think one of the reasons that Holacracy has stuck at Springest is because the former explicit power holder, and actually the current power holder, unless you've changed the governance.
Depends on definition of power.
Fair enough. That role with the authority to unratify the Constitution has burned the ships. You know, the idea of when you land on the beach, you burn the ships because you can never go back. So when the explicit power holder is not fully committed.
Would you agree? Would you agree on that?
Fully agree on that, and not just the last step that Rebecca mentioned, but especially the first one where the power holder says, we're going to do this and you're all going to come with me or not, and then you can leave, which is, you know, an explicit version of what I did here, but Zappos famously did, offering people money to leave if they didn't like it. This is a very important step, I think, to take, and it's something that we didn't initially do, but after, I think, 5-6 months or something, Diederick and I talked about it, and then I said, this is not an experiment anymore, which is what I started out with. And by saying it's not an experiment anymore and actually thinking it's an experiment forever, and I still feel free to tear up the Constitution or the thing I signed, which is on the wall, any day. Like every day I can choose to just kill this whole thing, and I'd be okay with doing that if I felt it was the best decision. But I don't, so we keep it on. And I think that's the most important thing, that the founder or whoever holds the power fully commits and shows everybody that they do. Otherwise, you're also, you know, leaving room for negotiation, doubt, you know, pushback, et cetera, et cetera. So I agree with that.
Power.
Yep.
Yeah.
From there, I think it's nice to go to the question of, well, this is about in which environments Holacracy wouldn't work, and for what kind of people it wouldn't work, but which kind of people would thrive in Holacracy. So for which kind of people would it be very appropriate to use?
I can start with that, yes. Let me answer the question in the negative first. If you, I think the one type of person, and this is really not a type of person, I don't believe, but that I don't see thriving is someone who says, let me just do my X job and not worry about anything else, right? Whatever the job is. I've seen developers do it. I've seen salespeople do it. There may be some types of jobs where people do it more than others, but do only that and don't bother me with meetings, with stuff, with processes, with procedures, with decisions. Like, I didn't get hired to do that. I'm not interested. I don't even want to think about it. I don't think that works. Right? There's some level of reflection and wanting to even look at tensions, right? Even if it's in the form of complaints, and then going, okay, wait, I can do something with this complaint now. That's required to make this work. And I think that's, and you might even argue that you can have a few of those people around even, but not very many, right? I would say that's the negative. The positive, I'm thinking about what I was just saying about being powerful. Like people that are interested in exploring their edge of being powerful, of taking a decision, of doing an experiment. And that can look very different from one person to the next. It could be really small, as in speaking up, right? Like being more powerful might be, I'm going to actually say something at the next meeting, right? That could be it. It could also be, I've got a role that's in charge of our location, and I think we should move house, right? I think we should move our office. That's going to be a rather bigger version of being powerful and being entrepreneurial. But I think if you're interested in exploring that edge for yourself, you're really going to thrive, because Holacracy is going to give you lots of opportunities and pathways for doing that. So those are a couple thoughts. Anyone want to add?
Two thoughts came to mind. The first is, I think we're in a really luxurious time in our history as humanity. Gone are the days when the predominant desire when coming to work is, I want to clock in at this hour and I want to clock out at that hour, and I want you to give me a paycheck, and that's it. For all of what I hear online, millennial entitlement or wanting to stay home, never that I've seen in our history are we at a point where more humans are looking for more in their work. They're looking for meaning in their work. And being able to offer a workspace and a working culture and structure that allows for creativity and different pathways and an alternative to the traditional corporate ladder, which doesn't usually have meaning for a lot of people coming into the working world right now, I think is really beneficial. And the other thing is, I think people who thrive in Holacracy are people who are flexible. I think the more rigid you are, and similar to the idea of, I don't want to deal with problems, I don't want to make changes, I don't want to rock the boat. You can have a few of those. They have one role with one accountability, but the more flexible you are, the easier it is to change the habits and pick up the behaviors that make for successful Holacracy practice.
Yeah, it's because it's fun. I disagree with that in so far that you don't have to have that, and it works very well as well. We have some people that would fit that mold of, I just want to do my job. I like my job, but what you do need, I think, is more craftsmanship. Everybody, no matter what the role, picking up the garbage as a book quote from Tom. You will own your job and you will have an opinion on how to do it. And you will also want to have influence on how to do it if someone else, decides to change that. And I think that's the more important thing than being flexible or even, I want to have an opinion about other things and move our office. It's like, if you're good at your job, and you are, otherwise you should be doing something else. But if you're good, you care about it and you know how to do it and you have an opinion on it. And that might be very small and unflexible and clear, but then, you do want to own that. And I think that's more than flexibility, it's more craftsmanship or caring about however small your job or role is. That's what I've noticed more.
So basically humans can thrive in Holacracy.
Yeah. And monkeys
that's
too,
That's a good answer to that question. I think humans can thrive in Holacracy. So another question that I saw on the list is, what would you consider to be the biggest challenge when starting with Holacracy? And I don't know who asked the question, but I'd like to ask Tom, when Viisi started with Holacracy, what would you say was your biggest challenge?
I really don't know, to be honest. I think you start somewhere, and a lot of people are curious. And I see a lot of things less dogmatic. So, for instance, I just was thinking when I listened to the answers that when I see a question, I always ask me, could the opposite also be right? So, Holacracy for me is a very good way of approaching a new way of working, to put it a little bit broad. But I find a lot of discussions totally dogmatic. That's why I also decided to take a lot of historical examples. And then you start somewhere, and then sometimes it just takes time. But we're living in times where we want to have immediate, let's say, success. And that's not the way it works. So just start somewhere. And I also think that a lot of people are just a little bit skeptical. And then it takes time. And as long as they don't boycott or let's say are talking sabotage, it's always called. As long as they don't sabotage, I think it's correct and also honest to give people time to buy in. So why not? So I just would say start, and then perhaps there's a very good reason to be a little bit skeptical.
Anyone who wants to add to that?
Yeah, one thought that came up about the biggest challenge is not to learn the game, not to read the Constitution and learn by heart the meeting procedures and all that. I think it's to unlearn is the biggest challenge. Unlearning the deep kind of instincts and reflexes, maybe from our lives or even evolutionarily, I don't know, when things get a little difficult or unclear or conflicted or in any other way difficult, like this reflex of going like that, right? Like looking up for some parental figure to save me, which could be the manager, some superhero to come in and save the day, make a decision, take on the responsibility, do whatever. To unlearn that behavior, you can run the Holacracy meetings perfectly, follow the rules perfectly, and still be kind of looking to others, your peers, the lead link, whoever, to save you, to take on some of that responsibility. I think that's the biggest one to unlearn, and it probably takes years, to be honest.
I think that's a great example of what I've come to call the mirror of Holacracy, often the shattered mirror. In my experience, at some point, each individual in a company using Holacracy practice is going to come up against their stuff, whatever their stuff happens to be, either, as Diederick mentioned, deferring their authority to a formal leader, even looking to the side to make sure Ruben thinks that my answer is okay. On the flip side of that, you've got a heroic, charismatic leader. I saw a question up there about a charismatic leader. And if that dopamine hit of coming in and saving the day is what you thrive on, and now you've got a bunch of fully emancipated coworkers who don't need you to be heroic, and heaven forbid you try to save them and they say, actually, thanks for your input, but you don't have the authority to tell me what to do anymore. I think I'm going to go do something else. The gut hit, that mirror just shattered for that person who thought, well, wait, my rule is law. So whatever your personal stuff or shadow piece is, I have noticed that Holacracy practice at some point will make you confront it. And whenever that happens, that can be very challenging for individuals.
Yes.
So, Rebecca, what would you say is the first thing that you have to get started with? The first thing that you need when you want to get started with Holacracy?
A meetup. They need to come
so
to
you
a meetup.
you already took the first
check,
step.
Done. I think one of the first things I don't want to anchor myself to this now. I think one of the first things is to accept the mess. Whenever you're learning something new, if you're that one outlier who can pick up a violin and play Beethoven with no flaws, I want to hang out with you because you're probably really cool, or a savant. But chances are you're going to make really horrible squeaky noises that annoy the neighbors, and then tomorrow it'll be a little bit better, and the next day it'll be a little bit better. But for a while, things are just going to be messy, and that's cool. Celebrate those messes, celebrate the failures, and kind of accepting that we're going to look like 6-year-olds for a while playing this new game, but it's going to get better, and that discomfort and that mess is normal. and fun. Own it, live in it.
My experience actually is that when I get feedback of people who start with thinking about implementing Holacracy, what is most valuable is just attend a tactical. So this typical Holacracy safari, maybe Springest or also at our place, helps a lot because this meeting of getting things done is totally structured, and everybody who works in another environment knows how bad their meetings are at where they work now. So it's if you just take the whole dogmatic stuff away and you wouldn't tell anything how this way of working is called, you would just say attend such a meeting and look how efficiently this is done and how balanced it is and how fast it is. I think that's an excellent starting point. And it also helps because everybody has exactly the same conclusion when they attend such a meeting.
One that I'd like to add is find the champion, and the ideal champion is Tom or Ruben, who owns the company or partially owns it, who can, be the Holacracy nerd that wants to figure it all out, and B, have the authority to tell everybody that this is what we're going to do from now on. If you don't have that one, then find the next person with the most former power, I would say, that has buy-in from whoever is above in the old hierarchy, and really give them the tools, the money, the resources to figure it all out. Because without that, and I speak at companies every now and then, that's almost always lacking. Then it's like the top management, and that's also a question somewhere, doesn't really care about it. Wow, big problem. Plus, the one who cares about it doesn't really have a good connection to the top guys often, of course. And then you're really dead in the water, because then you have either someone who cares or nobody who cares, which also happens quite a lot. Like, many people tend to say, like, this is cool, yeah, okay, well, so gotta go home, You have to have this champion who drives it all the time and who wants to, give Diederick a call about something tough, or read up on a few Holacracy community forum posts and figure out how to do X or Y, or call in help or stuff like that. You need that person, and that person has to be as high up or as connected high up as possible, I think. Otherwise, it will just slowly die. That's what I've seen a lot.
How do you deal with that if higher up people are opposed to Holacracy? Is one of the questions that's
I think you have to stop. You have to deal with that exclusively. Like, that's your first thing. If you don't solve that, then you can, pretend you're doing Holacracy and self-management, etc., but you're done. So deal with that first. That's my sort of sole response.
Yeah, I see Rebecca nodding as well. But another question that's really high up there is a bottom-up approach also possible? Ruben is basically saying that if you can't get the higher ups to be backing this decision of implementing Holacracy, you should stop. But is it possible to do bottom-up instead of top-down?
Depends what it is. So if you say Holacracy, then I think the beauty of Holacracy is that it doesn't add to the management hierarchy some nice tweaks and rules and things, but it replaces that system altogether with a rule set for distributed governance. And so it's not, that's 1 or 0, that's yes or no, right? You can't replace management hierarchy with a rule set for distributed governance and then not tell management about it. Right? That's not going to work. Well, it will be fun, actually. And I know of at least one example that did just that. A large Dutch company, bol.com. And counterintuitively, it's working, I'd say. And they still have a choice to make one day about which one it's going to be. But it's working because management is allowing it to work, right? So that's great until they don't, right? So that's a risk, I think. That's becoming harder and harder for them in their case because more and more of the companies doing it. But I don't believe you can do Holacracy that way. You can definitely take a lot out of Holacracy and start taking some of these practices, some of these rules, and start experimenting with those, but it's not the same thing. It'll give you lots of benefits, but it's not replacing management hierarchy. And you'll always have that shadow power in the background. So maybe leave and start a company. Yeah, like Anne and Inke.
Yeah. Right.
But she didn't leave for that reason. She wants the hierarchy back.
Right. No, that's not because I want to hire you back. So, is there anyone who wants to add to that question? Because some people have voted it. I'm just looking at the audience for a minute. If I don't see hands, I'll just continue to the next question. Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, what I could, this is the historian again. I think you just have to dive deeper. So for me, Holacracy is a bottom-up approach. And I think, why shouldn't you just combine a lot of stuff? So if I just go back to Enlightenment period, and you take the French Revolution, or you take division of powers, trias politica, or you take the parliamentary system, you have some people, philosophers, who invented it, but you still have a lot of different parliamentary systems. So I find it, I would just say, the beauty of the whole thing is that a lot of different people and different companies experimenting with a lot of stuff. And then in some context, one thing will work or not, or they will experiment further. It's a little bit like in nature, biology, where you have a lot of decentralized adjustments to the environment. And then in some situations, one thing will work out, in other situations, other things will work out. And if you just go back to the origins of Holacracy or other systems, it always goes deeper and deeper and deeper. We just had a conversation before the meeting started about the Roman Empire and the Roman army. The smallest entity of 7 people, they slept together in one tent, and the one who was in charge, the lead link of the smallest entity, was chosen by the 7 Roman soldiers. So sometimes you have to dive a little bit deeper and see it less dogmatic, I think.
I think there's a nice question on the screen. If you have a tip for each other. So does Viisi have like advice for HolacracyOne? So I would like to open that up to you guys.
No, it's not my role to advise others. I mean, I just said if somebody's curious, that's the thing I said about the Holacracy Safari, and I just would always invite everybody who has the feeling that you want to change something in your own company, just search for it. And it's like search for meaning, Viktor Frankl, and then everybody has to search for himself or herself.
All right, so I'm supposed to be offering a tip to Springest, huh? Well, the first is get everyone a pair of those pants.
Cool. No way.
You know, I think the beauty of Holacracy practice is I have no specific tip because I'm sure you'll surface attention if something comes up.
Yeah, that was my feeling immediately with this question. Like, it's a weird question. Like, how would I give tips to Diederick if he doesn't ask me? You know? I'm asking. Yeah. And if you're not asking me what your tension is, then I can't give you any, of course. You know, that's, yeah, what do you need? That will be the question. Let's see if you want to answer.
Okay, so I'm going to be the guy that answers the question.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've got some advice for all of you. No, I'm going to actually answer the question because I like to be a little obedient and give away my power to the question asker. I noticed, Tom, that you, when you showed the picture of Glassfrog for Viisi, that there were a lot of circles, a lot of roles, and what it triggered for me, I don't know if this is relevant for you, but I think it might be relevant for others. Because I don't know how many people actually work at Viisi these days, but I see often a tendency in governance to add accountabilities and then roles and then possibly circles, because that's what you do in the beginning as you're clarifying things and taking them out of the murky closet and making them explicit. And I think there comes a time where you need to do some spring cleaning and simplify things, or developers might say refactor. And look at all the beautiful accountabilities and roles and circles that you've created, and then to look at it clearly and say, okay, so what's the essence here? What is it that we need? And that's something I've noticed. Again, don't know if it's relevant for Viisi. It might be relevant for H1. You have a lot of circles, guys.
Every single one of them is awesome.
I get it. So to look at that and to simplify and remove and clean up, as well as always be adding. I think it's a simple thing, but we've done that at Energized. It was really, really nice to simplify things.
Why?
Because it was too much.
Why?
We were kind of getting ahead of ourselves, and probably, like, there were tensions underneath there, but they weren't like really, really tensions in the now, like urgent things. They were like, yes, this is a tension, but yeah, like, moving towards the future. too fast. So it was a good learning. Yeah. Yes. So you've got some advice from me?
No.
Again.
But what I did want to add to that is something that Diederick just said that I want to highlight is the add and add and add. One kind of general tip for good holacracy practice, in my opinion, is to be discerning on what you're adding and making sure that there's a term in medicine, the minimum effective dose. Mm-hmm. What is the minimum effective governance to solve the tension? It's so easy to get back into the habit of big refactors, intelligent design. Clearly there was a tension here. We were missing out on some of our tensions because we've got governance fluff. Cool, let's go through it. Let's do a governance audit. Let's clean out our governance a little bit. One way to preemptively mitigate that is to be very discerning and get really grounded in what tension are you trying to solve versus what am I trying to intelligently design. So I think that's my piece of advice, is to stay very grounded in your tension and what's the minimum viable governance to solve that tension without crossing what is such an easy line to cross.
Tom, would you like to add to that as well?
Minimum viable governance.
Because
I think I owe Diederick an answer.
Yeah.
We are simple and reduced on things which we can maximize very easily. So that's, for instance, the golden rule. Or that's, for instance, also the share agreement we have with our people. So there was a discussion which took us a year and a half to end up with a simple conclusion that everybody in our company, this 10% shares which are reserved for it, that everybody gets 1 point per year. Totally independent of what somebody is doing in our company, independent on the percentage of work somebody is doing, independent of somebody who has a sabbatical. So we are thinking, we are really reducing to the max. I don't know that many companies who have only one rule, for instance, but we like complexity or the amount of roles if it's done decentralized, because the circles should decide on that themselves, but there is also a reason for it. So for those people who like to read books, there's one book, Jury van Geest, Exponential Organizations, and we have also one, let's say, factor. It's called factor 100 or 1000, and that means that we think really, really large. So the things we do, we ask ourselves the question, how should this work when the company is 100 times bigger? So that's one thing. It's about scaling up. The second thing is that we think decentralized, and we think from an institutional background. So we think that the complexity of a state, that's our example. So management, or the old way of organizing businesses, is very simple. Tailor-based, 100 years is history until now. But we think in very, very, very large structures. And it doesn't matter if you split up a role. So if you would, let's say, take a role and you would make a role out of accountability, a circle likes this, something becomes more fluid. So it's in a way making organizations more fluid, and the smaller a role is, the easier it is for somebody who enters the company just to have a look at all those roles, and somebody enters the company in the circle and says, oh, that's interesting. I like the Christmas tree role because I'm a Christmas tree lover, and I would like to take care of this role because it's, for instance, one role. Just a very simple example. And it's also easier if, for instance, somebody leaves the company, just to take those roles and tell to everybody in the circle, here, those roles are there. Is there anything you would like to take with the already existing roles? So it has to do something with, make the organization more fluid. That's all.
What I also wanted to ask you, Tom, is that it's a big question up there, and you've talked about salaries. If you have multiple roles, and if you say like people can upvote or they can choose, like I would like this role to be there. How do you deal with salaries when people have multiple roles in your company?
It's not so difficult because, let's say, the roles somebody has are mainly in one circle. So I just to make it a little bit more simple. So we have 40 people. We have 20 advisors. Those people have mainly roles, 80% in the advisor circle. Then you have people who do the back office side of the mortgages. These are 4 people. So this what happens. But if somebody wants to take a role from another circle, as an example, then they can do so. But their salary until now is based on those, let's say, 80% main roles. But if the next question would be, what would you do in future when somebody would work for 50% in one circle with this salary and for 50% in this other circle, then there will be a discussion going on or a tension, and then the role, which is called compensation architect, will take care of that. So until now it works pretty well, but just see what happens in the future.
Thanks. So there's one question I would like to end with, and that's for all of you to answer. If you have to pick one, what's the most important value in the Holacracy practice?
I'm going to go with curiosity. Follow the tension.
You have to explain more. So
I have to explain more while Ruben thinks.
What do you mean?
I think ultimately, like the whole constitution, ultimately it's about there's a purpose, there's something you're trying to achieve, and then there are ways in which that is not quite happening as much as it's possible. Those are tensions. And so if you get really, really damn curious about lots of tensions, not taking them personally, not blaming others, not getting stuck in drama and politics, and just really curious about what is going on here, I think the rest is bijzaak, fluff, uitwerking, details. Yeah, curiosity. Can you educate curiosity? I think I think it is. The way I look at it is a muscle that you can train. So I think so, and I think actually Holacracy helps train it. It's definitely helped me train mine. Take things less personally. It's nice. Cool. Do you have something yet?
I'll think of something. No, I had to pick from many, many great answers, of course. No, actually, what's funny is that I didn't think of I was thinking of the Springest values. We have 7 defined values, which were created bottom up. But the one that I would pick now, and I don't even have a word for it, so please help me out here, is something like being an adult. You know, owning your stuff, not pointing at someone else or looking, as Diederick said, up or sideways or complaining about something. You can just raise your tension, owning your problem thereby, you know, daring to say that you have it, and then it will be solved. And you don't have to come up with a solution. This was something that I brought up this week at Springest, where someone asked me about something, you know, me being Ruben, not me being in some specific role, and asking like, oh man, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do with a product circle. They don't listen to us. And I said, so, you know, bring it up. Yeah, but I don't know how to fix it. And I said, yeah, I don't care, you know, bring it up and someone will, or not, you know, figure it out. It's not my problem, it's your problem. I do care about it, I like it, so bring it up. And that's all I had to do. And she, in this case, was very sort of shit, but how? And then she did it. And it was a bit awkward. It was in our sort of outermost, so highest circle. And she brought it up, and the facilitator, I think at some point asked, do you want any help or suggestion? And someone gave it, and then and basically solved it. And the funny thing was that the person who was then addressed, which was a lead link of the product circle in this case, where many of our developments, most of our developments happening, so tech, he really didn't like it. That was great. And this is, of course, what Clara already felt, that he wouldn't like her bringing this up and putting him on the hot seat to figure it out. But he had to, because he was accountable. And now they're figuring it out, and the whole tension is gone, and it was nothing to begin with, in my opinion, you know, from the heroic perspective. I knew what they would have to do, you know, but they did it. It was awkward, but she owned it and got it fixed. So that ownership or adult behavior of just saying, I have a problem, or I'm scared, or I'm, you know, stuck, whatever. That's it.
Thanks. Rebecca, what's the most important value for you?
Oh my goodness. Okay. A most important value?
No.
Ah, damn.
The.
Okay, all right.
Pick one.
The. You know, I'm gonna kind of riff off that adultness and say vulnerability in all its forms. Professional vulnerability, willingness to take some risk with often something you value, both in terms of time and money and your heart, especially I see founders who've put their lifeblood into their organization. So that vulnerability to try something new. And then on a personal level, the vulnerability to bring your whole self to your work, to the structure, to try something that might have you confronting a piece of yourself that you've put to the side, often for years. The vulnerability to count on others, to expect from others that which is explicitly now in their roles. Willingness to defer pieces of your authority to distribute it out to others, and vulnerability to take on things that might just seem so uncomfortable, knowing that there is light on the other side. Sometimes when it's dark, you think that you've been buried, but you've just been planted.
I think most important thing goes back to the Quakers. It's the principle of the circle and the constant principle, because it's the deeper level of being human, which I guess is the biggest strength in the whole model. But I think it takes time to develop it and also to explore it. But the deeper essence of the whole thing is being human, which is originally comes from the Quakers, where you are in a circle, and the constant principle is just to keep everybody on board. That's the main thing. So it's a very intelligent thing. It's beyond the democracy. Democracy is the tyranny of the majority, and constant is to keep everybody in and to integrate it. So that somebody who would say, did you think about this? Becomes part of the solution. And this has two effects. And that's more or less keeping people together. And that's something which is lacking, let's say, in our democracy, because it's a tyranny of the majority. And that's something I think has a huge, gives us a huge possibility of organizing companies to create a better workspace, but perhaps also create a better society.
Thanks so much for all your input. So be curious, have ownership of your roles, show vulnerability, and look up the Quakers and their and their way of consent decision making. Right. Thanks so much to our panel. Give them an applause, and thanks so much for being here.